The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show. Corrupt former FBI director and special counsel Robert Mueller, who tried to destroy both me and my family, as well as Donald Trump and dozens of others, has gone on to his maker. He was, in my view, a huge participant in the greatest single abuse of power and dirty trick in American political history, and we'll talk about that later. But right now, we'll talk about a huge concern that I have. I believe that Donald Trump was first elected in 2016 because of a free, fair, and open field in terms of the internet and mass-based modern communications. I believe one of the reasons they were able to steal the election, in my opinion, from him in 2020 is because of a campaign of online censorship, cancellation, manipulation of algorithms, shadow banning, other manipulations of online activity, extraordinary political dirty tricks in order to tip the scales for the Democrats. Among the worst offenders, however, one that doesn't get as much notice as they should is Google. And Dr. Robert Epstein, who I must acknowledge is literally one of the smartest human beings I have ever met. I'm fascinated by every one of his interviews, is a senior research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology. He has a PhD from Harvard. He's a former editor of Psychology Today, but he's also, more interestingly to me, a pioneer in the study of online manipulations. Dr. Epstein is by no means a Republican, a conservative, a Trump supporter. He's essentially a scientist in this case. In December 2023, Dr. Epstein testified for the second time before Congress after reporting on his success in creating the world's first large online system for preserving and analyzing the ephemeral content of big tech companies and how they were using them to influence elections, children, adult human behavior, and so on. He's built an amazing dashboard. You can go yourself to AmericanDigitalShield.com. I am proud to have Dr. Robert Epstein join me on the Roger Stone Show.
Hi there, Roger.
So, Dr. Epstein, you have opened my eyes. I see the executives from Google going to the Trump White House, kissing the great man's derriere, pretending in some way that they didn't try to kill two elections against him and later destroy him. Sundar Pichai at the Trump White House to discuss government partnerships, workforce investment, and political concerns about Google. The Alphabet executives show up at the meetings during the Trump transition. They certainly pay for all of the high-priced tickets at Trump's inauguration. They show up at a White House dinner, both Sergey Brin and Sundar Pichai, who, although Google is a public company, is essentially controlled by the two largest shareholders. But as you correctly pointed out in a brilliant interview with Michael Knowles, we've seen almost an 87% increase in liberal bias that Google is putting before into email screens. Explain to me what's going on here.
Sure. Well, as I think everyone knows, it's not a secret that President Trump is somewhat vulnerable to flattery. And sure enough, they started a few weeks before the 2024 election, they started throwing flattery and money at him. And they got him and they got the DOJ to back off. They had been trying to put some constraints on Google, and they literally just backed off, and now President Trump seems to think that Google is his best buddy. You just mentioned a number. Let me update that for you, and you'll really see how diabolical this plan is on the part of Google and to a lesser extent some other tech companies. They backed off in 2024 because of the monitoring that my organization was doing nationwide and is still doing 24 hours a day. And there was also a big case, an antitrust case against Google, which ruled in 2024 that Google is a monopoly. So they backed off on their election manipulation. We have all the data showing that. Our system forced a 20% drop in political bias on Google itself, and a 50% drop at that time in 2024 on political bias on YouTube. So they really did back off in 2024, and in effect, we had a fairer election in 2024 than we've had in the past, and that allowed President Trump to win the election. But then they came up with this crazy plan of cozying up to the president, and they got the DOJ to back off, so there was no breakup of Google, and they got President Trump to be their best buddy. And since that time, now I'm going to give you the new numbers here, since that time, since the presidential election in 2024, there has been a more than 275% increase in political bias on Google itself, and more than a 450% increase in political bias on YouTube recommendations. Now those are humongous numbers. In other words, they are playing quite a game here. You could call it a false flag operation, I suppose, because basically now that they've gotten Trump and the DOJ to back off, even though we're still collecting the data, we're still seeing what they're doing, they are just going all out right now, all out to make sure, yeah?
So, Dr. Epstein, give my listeners an idea of specific instances in which they manipulate the data that we see to benefit the left, the Democrats, and an anti-Trump agenda. Give us examples. I can give you
a great example. On October 31st, 2024, our system detected that on Google's homepage, they were sending out 50% more Go Vote reminders to Democrats than to Republicans. Now, their homepage is seen 500 million times a day in the United States. So that is a very, very blatant manipulation of votes, because you end up with millions of more people showing up to vote, and most of those are Democrats. So we went public with that on October 31st, and on November 1st, just a couple days before the election, they stopped. We got them to stop. So from that point on, the 1st until the 5th of November, they did not send out more Go Vote reminders to members of one party. That's a blatant example. Right now, they are sending out more register to vote reminders to Democrats. Very soon, they're going to be sending out more mailing your ballot reminders to Democrats. And then, of course, they're going to do it again as we get closer to the election. They are going to send out more Go Vote reminders to Democrats. Those are just...
That's interesting. I actually think that's an illegal campaign, illegal corporate campaign contribution. In fact, in violation of federal election law. Doesn't mean that they, of course, will be prosecuted for it. I think that many people who want a free, unfiltered dialogue on the internet feel just because Elon cracked the monopoly and established an extraordinary beachhead for free speech and free expression, that issue has disappeared. Meanwhile, the manipulation, particularly by Google, but also on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, continues to this day, and it will have a deleterious effect in the 2026 election. I think they realized after the election of Trump that they had to try to get the toothpaste back in the tube. They put in all this manipulation central manipulation to create this wall of censorship and cancellation, manipulating the algorithm. So if you defended Trump, you would be limited who saw your defense, for example. And the way you have charted this in a completely scientific, not a predetermined desire, but again, I urge people to go to America's, that's with an S, digitalshield.com. You also just posted an extraordinary piece called The Case Against Gmail. This is, you say, we trust our email providers to be neutral carriers of our private thoughts, but Google has traded that trust for a surveillance model that scans, stores, analyzes, and manipulates that data. In an era of invisible algorithms, how do we build a digital world where free doesn't mean surrender? It's a brilliant, brilliant piece. We've got about 2 minutes before the break, but why don't you begin to take us down this trail?
Sure. This is a piece I've been wanting to write for years and years, because most people in the whole world use Gmail, and they don't even realize what's going on. Gmail is nothing like the U.S. Postal Service. They have no obligation to deliver your mail. They very frequently, when they've done this to the Republicans, they divert the emails into people's spam boxes so they never see them. So Gmail is a tool of manipulation and surveillance. It is nothing like the U.S. Postal Service or any national postal service. It is a scam.
What do we got on? I absolutely agree. And we're going to have about 20 swing districts. The ability to geo-target their mischief is particularly troublesome to me. And the president has to recognize that despite the fact that all these tech executives who jointly, whether it's Tim Cook or any Mark Zuckerberg or any of the titans of the Silicon Valley who may be now showing up for dinners and conferences, these people tried previously to kill him in an unprecedented effort at censorship, cancellation, and manipulation of what people can see. Google is torquing up to do it again, and it will be meaningful in the midterm elections, in which I suspect it boils down to about 20 swing districts, and they can geo-target, as I say. I expect the Republicans to be more than competitive. The war certainly was unforeseen, but I'm convinced that the Republicans still can win the House and hold the Senate. I call those who are panicking at this point panicans. I'll be right back with Dr. Robert Epstein, one of the most brilliant people I know, who has done a deep dive on how Google is manipulating our attitudes about virtually everything. We're talking to Dr. Robert Epstein. He is the senior research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology, former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today, has a PhD from Harvard, has published 15 books and hundreds of scientific and important empirical articles. He's also a pioneer in the study of online manipulation, and he doesn't come at this from a political point of view. He's an unbiased scientist, but he did email me the other day saying that the online environment for conservatives is rapidly getting worse through these manipulations by big tech. Between Election Day of 2024 and today, this was several days ago, 2026, liberal bias had increased 276% on Google search and by 457% on YouTube. That means they're boosting liberal content and suppressing conservative content. You had a brilliant interview with Michael Knowles. I want to go back to your brilliant piece on why you don't use Gmail, why you argue that Gmail is really a surveillance program that steals all your data. What do they do with that data when they obtain it?
Well, they sell it, and they also share it with intelligence agencies, and most importantly, they use it to build models to manipulate us more effectively. And that's the really scariest part. And if people want to learn about the dangers of using Gmail, they can go to my brand new essay that was just published. It's at thecaseagainstgmail.com, thecaseagainstgmail.com. You need to be informed about that, if nothing else. We're also expanding now our monitoring to try to make the midterms into free and fair elections. And so we're trying to expand now into those 20 battleground races. If people want to know more about that and see our monitoring system in action, which is running in all 50 states, by the way, 24 hours a day, they can go to americasdigitalshield.com. If people want to help us, there are instructions there about how they can help us. They can sponsor one of our field agents. Again, that's americasdigitalshield.com. And in general, if you want to protect yourself and your family from online surveillance and manipulation, please take a look at my website, which is myprivacytips.com. That's myprivacytips.com. And Roger, I want to thank you so much for taking an interest in what we're doing and for understanding what we're doing, because most people are completely in the dark when it comes to the surveillance and the manipulation by these big tech companies.
In the modern age, he who controls communications controls the political narrative and dialogue. And there was a period, it's still very true in many cases, where if you questioned the official narrative, whether it's about the integrity of elections or whether it's about the safety and efficiency and effectiveness of vaccinations, or whether it is about any number of Russian collusion, or whether Hunter Biden's laptop was real, whether it was Russian disinformation, you would simply be silenced and taken off the chessboard in terms of communications. Free, fair, honest elections absolutely depend on a level playing field and everybody being able to communicate in an even way. That is our goal. Strongly urge you to send a contribution to americasdigitalshield.com. They're doing vital, indeed important work that could help save the country. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back with more.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?